Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NBA Edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith. We are getting ready to go over the 7-game slate for DraftKings main slate. January 9th, this is your Thursday video breakdown. Obviously, the goal is to help you win. We try to point you to the best plays of the slate, also factoring in projections, ownership, matchups, all that fun stuff. If this video helps you out in any way, give it a like and subscribe to the channel, and even join us in Discord. And if you're feeling extra giving, you can smash the super thanks below the video, throw us a few shekels. Also, we do get several viewers, returning visitors. So if you are one of the people that keep coming back and watching but aren't subscribing, please do that. That helps us out quite a bit. All right, the way we do this, we go position by position, highlighting the best plays. Let's start at point guard. Trae Young and Cade Cunningham come in with about the same price, about the same minutes projection, and about the same fantasy projection, but one of them possibly is going to go very under-owned. Which of these two guys are you starting your build off with?
Neither.
So no interest in the top two projecting point guards?
I think they're fine. I wouldn't say I'm starting off my build with like locking one of them in. I think they're okay plays, but point guard stacked like it always is. I think there are other spends that look a little bit better. Trae without Jalen Johnson's always fine, but 10-3 now, not quite as cheap as he was the other day. And then Cade 10-2, not as cheap as he's been recently without Jaden Ivey. So I think they're okay, but not core plays for me today.
No, I completely agree. I think if you're going to get one of them, Trae would be the one I would lean towards, just because I guess if that ownership holds true, that's ridiculous. I would just much rather play the guy who's a third of the ownership. I doubt it is, but this is a slate without any true studs. These guys are the operating studs with the best projections, but there's other guys that are not that far away from them. I just think a balanced build makes a lot more sense on this slate. Speaking of which, Devin Booker comes in with a projection very close to these two guys, and he's $1,000 cheaper. You also have Steph Curry if he's in. He's currently questionable. And they have a few other guys that are projecting really well. Tyler Hero, Scotty Barnes, Colin Sexton. Obviously, Colin Sexton looks like a core play at this point with this projection. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. You can play Trae and Cade Cunningham for sure. Obviously, Trae is quite the hammer play to end the night, but I just don't think you have to do that. I think Devin Booker is probably where you start off as far as paying at a high level. And then if you don't want to eat the chalk there because he's coming at like 22%, maybe you can pivot to KD or drop down a little bit more. But I think Devin Booker looks like probably the top overall stud on this slate.
Yeah, he's up there. I think, like you said, both of the Suns look pretty good against Atlanta. I think you can certainly make a case for others, though. I think Steph Curry, if he's in, 8,700, no Kuminga, no Wiggins, possibly others missing. They have like 5 questionable dudes on Golden State. Luckily, that's the first game of the night. One of the first games of the night. I think 8.7 is a really good salary on him. And given the likely ownership, he's questionable himself. So if he's in, I don't really think anyone's going to play him. I think he's a really, really strong unowned tournament play in the upper 8s.
Yeah, I agree. I just think right now it's hard to really gauge what to do there because he is questionable. It doesn't feel like he's going to play. So if he is out, obviously we have to look at the Warriors' value instead. But luckily, we don't really have to guess. Like you said, first game of a 3-pack to start this slate. So we will know going into lock what to do with Steph or his teammates. So after him, I mean, Colin Sexton is not that far behind him. He looks really, really good at 6.7K. Obviously, good usage with a ton of injuries for Utah. Him and Lowry are just going to soak up all the usage. So they both are going to look good here, but he's only 6.7K. A little bit expensive for him, considering he's very, very scoring dependent. But I still think he looks like a really good play here, especially since he's projecting extremely well. And by the way, in the last 3 games, Miami has the 3rd fastest pace in the league. So Miami is actually playing pretty fast. Could be a product of the fact that they've been running into good offensive teams as well that also push the pace. But whatever the case may be, this game has major shootout potential. So Sexton definitely stands out.
Yeah, he's probably a core play for me. I think the ownership, like, he'll be owned, but I think people have seen him the last couple of games without all these other Utah guys kind of underwhelm relative to what they were hoping for, and now he's a bit more expensive. So I don't think he's going to be like mega super duper chalk, and I think he's a pretty good play as a result. There was a lot of cheap stuff there, like Van Vliet, 7.2 is fine. I think Garland without Mitchell is going to look quite good on this slate as well against Toronto, like an amazing matchup for the Cavs. Even on a back-to-back, Anthony Simons again without Jeremy Grant looks pretty good against Dallas. There's a ton to like here. Cole Anthony without all the injured guys for Orlando. Banchero is out again tonight, so Anthony by default is going to have to take most of the usage, most of the minutes in the backcourt. 5,800, more expensive than he's been, but point guard, shooting guards, something that makes him pretty appealing on this slate.
Yeah, I was hesitant to list Cole as an early core play because of the possible return of Banchero. Obviously, Banchero was going to be limited no matter what, but now that that isn't the case, Cole looks really, really good at 5.8K. Obviously, the minute projection is a little bit low. The prices come up, and the Wolves are not a fun matchup. But if Dante DiVincenzo keeps starting, maybe that's kind of a non-issue up front. Like maybe he won't really get the brunt of that matchup. Whatever the case may be, he has good usage here and still is cheap enough to make sense. Anthony Simons looks okay. I think that's fine. The price is still good. Projection's not amazing, but I do like the price. Quickly's price is good. I will say, by the way, on the Cavs, and Garland's a good call if we can trust that he's going to play regular minutes. The last time this happened, when Mitchell sat and the other guys played, the other guys looked good, but then they ended up being super limited for no reason. So, and especially on a back-to-back, it is worth noting if we can actually trust the Cleveland guys if they're in. But in theory, they do look good. As far as value, Karis LeVert, 4.1K, looks like a core play with Mitchell out. Projection is not amazing, but the matchup with the Raptors and the price both are, so I'm okay with it. Dennis Schroeder at 5.1 would pop if Curry's out, but Schroeder himself is also questionable. So what happens here if both Schroeder and Curry are out? Who are you looking at?
Well, they don't have Pajemski, they don't have Gary Payton, so they're pretty much out of point guards. I don't really know what they would do. Like Pat Spencer, perhaps at 3K flat is someone you can consider, but I'm not going to pretend to know anything about his game or whatever. Right. That's a really disastrous scenario if Golden State's without like all these guys, and we're going to have to play several of them. Mm-hmm. But there's also major risk of complete failure, and they might score 80 points as a team. So not something I'm excited about. I assume at least one of Schroeder or Curry will play and make that a moot point. But if they're both out, then it's kind of a disastrous scenario. And you just kind of have to check projections later and see what they say, because I don't really have a take off the top of my head.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I don't really think we can put much stock in this. Who's the guy you're saying? Spencer, 3K flat. There's that. Like if he randomly end up getting the start, sure. I think it's just going to be like, yeah, check projections, check starting lineup. If we get to that point, if Curry is in, he's a good tournament play. If he's out and Schroeder is in, he looks like a core play. Anybody else at point guard you see, or are you ready to move it along?
I like Ty Jerome quite a bit. Without Mitchell, the minutes have been pretty steady for him all season off the bench. He's been amazing per minute, like 1.2 points per minute. For Ty Jerome, he's 3-3. If you're worried about the other Cleveland guys being limited, theory when that won't fit, it's Toronto. There could be garbage time. I think there are a lot of paths for Ty Jerome to get there at 3-3, and he's someone that looks really good to me as a full punt.
Yep, definitely a decent punt. In the name of Jared Butler, anytime you're close to 3K flat, we can try it. Okay, Devin Booker comes in with the best projection over at shooting guard. Obviously, he looks like the play here, but Anthony Edwards is not far behind. They're still Colin Sexton. Amen Thompson again looks good, and Tyler Hero looks good too. If we're looking at paying up top, Jalen Green also projects pretty decently. I feel like Amen Thompson is, even though he's coming up to 7.1K, he feels like a core play. Honestly, like he feels like he's not quite expensive enough. His projection is really nice. The Grizzlies play fast. So I like this spot for him quite a bit. Weird, though, that he got there last time with a 10% usage rate. That was gross. Like, I don't know
that's what he does. Like, he's not a scorer. Like, he can score. He gets easy buckets in transition, things like that. There should be transition opportunities against Memphis because they play fast. But he's not a guy that's going to take a ton of shots typically. Luckily, he rebounds the shit out of the ball. He gets steals and blocks. He passes a little bit. He's just a very safe play. And the pace of this game, pace up spot for Houston, just makes him a very obvious play. Guard forward eligible, so he's eligible at the maximum number of positions. Nothing bad to say about him. I think he's someone you're going to play and play with confidence.
Yep, 100% agree. So Edwards, I think, is a tournament play, but I just don't like playing guys against the Magic, so it's not something I'm going to do. For 200 more, I'll just play Booker, or I'll take the savings with Sexton or Amen, or I'll just pivot to Hero, who I think is in a way better spot, obviously, against the Jazz. I'd just rather do that. Obviously, if you want to go away from those guys who probably are going to garner ownership, Edwards is in play because he's been chucking like crazy. He's had monster usage for like the last 4 games, and that probably won't stop. It's just not a great matchup. If we want to go down, there is Malik Beasley against the Warriors. Not really the best matchup. They're top 10 in terms of not giving up a lot of 3-pointers, the 3-point makes anyways. There's other guys just like in the low mid range that do look decent, like Shadon Sharp. You have Quentin Grimes with all those Mavs still out. Rozier's not the worst value at 5K flat. We can still get Levert here at shooting guard. Boggy at 4.4. There's a lot to like down here. Obviously, like if Moses Moody is in and Steph and or Shooter are out, he would look interesting. And Buddy Hield's shooting guard only, I believe. So he also would look good in that situation. So lots to like here, but right now, Sexton and Amen, depending on where you want to use them, that's up to you. They look like borderline must for me on the slate. And then if you want to pay up, I think Booker is the guy to go to.
Yeah, I think he touched on Green briefly, but without Jabari and Tari Eason, the usage for him is through the roof. He's erratic with the shooting, so there's certainly a path for him to just not make any shots and not quite get there. But 6,500, mentioned the pace-up spot against Memphis. His ownership might be there. He was projecting for ownership last time, and no one played him. I don't know if people will play him this time. Maybe they'll see the 2 games in a row that he's smashed, and they'll play him tonight. But he's not projecting for a ton of ownership, and I think he's once again a great play, just given the role he has right now. Moses Moody, I like that call. Guard forward eligible. He's questionable, of course, but even with everyone in, they're still without Wiggins, they're still without Kuminga and Pajemski. So low 20s minutes as of now makes Moody look like a really good play, and he has a path to more if some of the other guards are out. So 3-3, there's really only room for upside on him unless he's out. But if other guys said too. Moses Moody's, that's what I'm saying. If he's in and the other guys are out, there's only room for upside on him. And then another cheap Cavalier, Max Strus, under 4K. No Mitchell. Minutes have been fairly steady for him since he came back, like mid-20s. Decent per minute guy. Great matchup. Slightly prefer Strus to Levert if I'm shopping in that range.
That would be an interesting pivot for sure if the ownership on Levert gets super inflated. I will definitely agree with that. That could be interesting. Guys like Johnny Juzang, I think we didn't really touch on Collier at point guard. Those guys are starting for the Jazz, so their minutes are not super concrete, but they should get 20, 25 minutes, maybe more. So I don't think they're the worst value plays, just not like necessarily priorities right now.
If Curry and Schroeder are out, I guess Buddy is the one that will take the usage. No one else on this team is like a shooter scorer type. He's really the only one
Buddy feels
left.
like a lock for me if those guys are not there.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for him not to see enough minutes.
I mean, he already looks good because there's no Wiggins. This is just an extra guy without like 20, 30 minutes or 28 to 30 minutes just gone. So for sure. All right, so small forward, Amen Thompson looks like the play here. Lauri Markkanen's probably my second favorite here at 7.7K. Don't really want to pay for any of these other guys. They're just kind of overpriced. Scotty, the projection's not good enough. Just on the road against the Cavs, no thanks. Denny Avdia, I think we can go back to Denny again. He smashed last night. The price has come up, but I think it's fine. Projection's not amazing, not a priority or a core play, but he is close. I think he's still a really good play. Jaime Jaquez, though, might be a better play at 5.3K. You get a lot of savings and not that far away from that projection. We can keep working our way down. Najee Marshall at 5K is still in play. Tumani Kamara, I talked about him yesterday. He was a really good play. I think he looks good again at 4.5K. He starts and gets like 35 minutes a game, basically. So if he can stay hot, that looks nice. You talked about Moody and Strus, and we just touched on Juzang. So lots to like here. I don't think I would really go full punt down here. I think there's a lot of cheap guys, probably starting with Jaquez that look good, but Amen is the top play, and I do like Lowry again because that usage is going to be insane with all the injuries for Utah.
Yeah, this is definitely a pay down spot. Beyond like Markkanen, there's really not a lot to love. Amen Thompson, obviously. Struce, I mentioned that shooting guard you can play here. I think Dean Wade is a fine salary saver also for Utah, just because there's minutes to go around. No Mitchell and all that. 3,700 is pretty cheap on him, so he pops kind of as a pretty good value for me. I like the Avdia call. Ceiling is there. The game a couple games ago, like he had foul trouble, he got hurt, didn't work out, but without Grant on the season, he's been quite steady. So even at 7-1, I think he's a strong play. Kamara, like you mentioned. Bogdanovich without Jalen Johnson is fine too at 4-4. Reliant on his shooting, but that game in general looks like a pretty good one in terms of total and fairly tight spread. So I don't mind adjusting a Bogdanovich or Najee Marshall in the 4 to 5 range.
Yeah, sure. I think I would prefer Bogdanovich of the two, but they're both viable. All right, power forward KD leads the way with the best projection. KD looks awesome. I think he's a really good pivot off of Booker because Booker looks like he's going to be a little bit owned. Both are good plays. I think based off of ownership right now, I kind of prefer KD, but both are awesome. Evan Mobley, again, I'm a little bit concerned about the Cavs thing. Obviously, with no Mitchell, he, in theory, is a good play. 8K against the Raptors, that looks good. The minutes projection should be a little bit worrisome, though. So I'm not really feeling it personally. Not paying 9.6 for JJJ with Ja back. Lowry and Denny look good. Dre is too cheap. He looks borderline core play. And I already talked about Hawkins. I still like PJ Washington at 6.9K. Don't have a problem there at all. Lots to like here at power forward again, even though the projections are not like through the roof. But the one that stands out the most is going to be Hawkins and Dre for me. They're just too cheap for the projection and the upside that they carry at a not so great position.
Yeah, Draymond does look good. Evan Mobley, even in 28 minutes, projects pretty well for the dollar. Like, even if he's limited, there's still a path for him to get there. I do agree that the ultimate ceiling is probably elusive, but there's not a lot to pay for on this slate, so I think he's playable by default almost. KD, totally fine with that. Kyle Anderson is a guy, another Warrior who could get steamed up if guys miss. I think Draymond is the one mostly tied to his value, but with Wiggins out, he might have a role anyway. Another like full punt Warrior that's viable. We haven't talked about Memphis, but they have like Morant and Bane and Jackson and Aldama all questionable. There's a chance that value emerges here. We just don't know when that'll be. That game starts an hour after the others lock. So kind of wait and see situation. There's likely to be value there. I just don't know when it's going to happen.
Right.
And then we can look at Asar Thompson again. Not really going to get a lot of ownership. Probable after missing a couple of games with an illness, even in mid-20s minutes like we saw in his last game, he can get there. He's exactly like his brother, just a stat stuffer, mega athlete, and he's super cheap. So without Ivy, I think he's a pretty interesting value that's not garnering ownership right now.
Yeah, 100%. If he starts, I'm interested. If he doesn't start, I do not want to do that just because he's sick.
You do not.
No, we've been there, done that. Also, just, he's sick. So if he's not completely healthy, that also could be a reason to not use him. But if he's not healthy and he's not playing, very distinct possibility he just doesn't play at all. Naz Reid at 4.7K, obviously a direct pivot in that range. Nikola Jovic, he also looks okay. The Jazz are a great matchup. He's starting and getting good run. So all those guys are kind of right there, the same kind of plays. Maybe just play with ownership there and see what you want to do. But I would honestly, I kind of like Jovic right now. If he's going to keep starting and getting to face the Jazz, that looks pretty good. Yeah, not seeing anything else that really feels like a must here. Just kind of keep an eye on what happens with starting lineups and just from there. All right, so at center, KD looks again like the best player at this position at 9.2K. Again, he just looks good. I have no problem with KD. I love that he's not even owned right now, so even more reason to like KD on a slate that you don't have many studs to pay up for. Şengün right behind him, same price basically, but good projection. Also not super owned, so I would rather pay for both of these guys over Evan Mobley personally. Bam Adebayo is also getting ownership. The funny thing about the Jazz is they give up a ton of production on the outside via three-point shooters, and inside with Walker Kessler swatting shots to the moon. It's not as advantageous of a spot. Bam can still eat. He is a good player, obviously, and the price is nice. But I think I'm leaning Hero over Bam. And also, you just look at the price gap. Like, if everybody's going to be playing Bam at 20 to 30%, I would rather play Hero, who might go a little bit overlooked. But both are good. There's nothing wrong with either of them. JJJ is overpriced. Jarrett Allen is a good value in theory. Just wary of Cavs tonight. Ayton, good price, solid projection. I'm okay with Ayton at 6K. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Walker Kessler continues to never be over 7K. He looks fine, although I do not like targeting centers against Bam. It almost never works out. Jackson Davis looks really, really good. The minutes projection is light, but the actual projection is pretty darn good for a 5K guy. He feels like a core play. Like him quite a bit, especially with Wiggins out. Maybe he gets a little bit more burn. That's probably all for me. I think there's some other guys down here that we can consider, but those are the guys that I feel the best about.
Yeah, I like the Aiden call a lot. Pretty good price on him. I think, was it Robert Williams who's out? Somebody's out,
Yep.
so maybe his risk of benching is not quite as high as it may otherwise be. Jackson Davis, nothing to say about him. Additionally, like, he's had a pretty low floor, but hard for them not to give him minutes given their lack of bodies. Evan Mobley again. Jared Allen looks pretty good at 6'4". Like, if you're concerned about minutes, Jared Allen at 6'4" is easier to stomach than Evan Mobley at 8K, but I like both quite a bit. Şengün, been kind of hit or miss overall. The matchup against Memphis is not great, but the pace will lead to more possessions. In theory, pretty good spot for Şengün at 9-1. I don't mind that. Otherwise, Bam's okay. I think your point about Kessler is accurate, though. Kessler on the other side, same thing. That's kind of it. It's kind of a shitty center slate, which is unfortunate because it's usually a position of strength.
I actually love it because it's shitty as far as like a truly reliable stud. There's no Wemby, Jokic, Giannis there, but I really like it because honestly, the slate in general is pretty awesome because it looks like a lot of the ownership is going to go to Cade because nobody knows what to do. And what I want to do is just get the best lineup with a lot of guys that are just way too cheap. They're just really nice values. And other guys like KD who for whatever reason are going overlooked and look really good. Like there's nothing wrong with them at all. Speaking of which, let's go to our flag plant and overall strategy to wrap this thing up.
Let's see. Not going to flag plant Thompson because that's way too obvious. I guess I will flag plant Steph Curry if he's in. Obviously questionable. Maybe he won't be, but I like the spot against Detroit. Like pretty tight spread in that game. If you're going to play Cade, then you probably want a few Warriors on the other side. You're going to get to a couple Warriors by default because they are shorthanded, but I think Curry's one who's not going to get much ownership if he's in. So love the spot, love the price. Point guard is going to lower his ownership, so Curry will be my plant of the day.
Yeah, I don't mind it at all. I just think I'm going to go KD as my flag plant, especially if this ownership is going to be even remotely close to sticking. If everybody's going to go look at Booker and Cade, I like the idea of closing things out with KD, possibly also versus Trey. Trey's ownership also feels really, really light, especially if everybody's going to go to Cade. I would rather go with Trey. And if everybody's going to go with Devin, I'd rather go to KD. Certainly, if you're doing a lot of lineups, you can mix that up too. Like you don't have to fully fade Devin or fully fade Cade, but I just think those guys stand out right now from a projection and ownership perspective. And beyond that, like the core plays are starting to find form here. Like a lot of really good, obvious plays are starting to stand out. Just going to be interesting to see what officially finally happens with the rest of the Cavs lineup and what happens with the Warriors. I think that's going to be pretty key. I got like my voice is super scratchy all of a sudden. That's going to be key to the rest of the night. That said, hopefully this helps you out. You can also join Discord for further insight and advice as we get closer. I'll give my final core plays for the slate, and also hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and consider dropping a donation to the super thanks below the video if we help you out in any way. All right, thanks for watching and good luck.